the analyze current state. This activity would obviously involve quite a sort of significant tasks, and it has got its own inputs such as the needs and the elicitation results. But then let's look at what kind of tasks would we try and do within this activity of analyze current state. You need to have stakeholder engagement. Again, we need to understand, because we started that with the in the elicitation collaboration. We've had an interaction with the senior stakeholders, with the the team, with the employees, with the customers, users. We've had a rounds of interactions, and that need to continue, because we can't, as I said, we cannot stop the interaction. It's a continuous process. And then we need to also engage the governance structure here, because we need to start with implementation of the business analysis activities, and so we need to have some kind of a governance structure there. We need to define the future state again, to be able to come up with what could be done in the next few months or years, assess risks, define change strategy. So all of these, analyze potential value and recommend solution, assess enterprise limitations, look at what kind of limitations that we have, what are the constraints that we're operating on, what are the resource limitations that we have. Are we having any shortage of skills, for example? Are we having any shortage of tools, the techniques that we can try and deploy? All of those need to be looked at. Recommend actions to increase the solution value. What could be the steps for us that we can try and deploy so that we can increase the solution value? We can try and make sure that we are realizing the solution quicker and faster and better in a more structured way. How can we engage the team and the stakeholders and start realizing that now in the next few days and weeks and months, instead of years to come? So what are the things that are involving the business requirements? Obviously, we would need to also use the current state description as an input, and then it would give you the output of business requirements. But also you would need to understand that the definition of future state would be something that would come up as an output from outside this analyze current state. So it is going to take some of the information and the insights that you gather through all these different tasks, and that will feed into a definition of the future state. So in terms of if you really talk about the specifics of how you can get the guidelines, what are the different tools that you potentially deploy within this? So you would obviously have a business analysis approach. You would need to use that. Remember, we had this done as part of the previous knowledge areas. Very important to refer to that as a continuous, as a living artifact. It's not something that you write the first day and then forget. It needs to be continuously referred to, continuously updated, and then continuously monitored whether we are following the approaches, methodologies, the techniques that we have set out for. Enterprise limitations and the resources and the constraints, that is very, very important. What kind of strategy we're talking about in the organization? Is it going to be an approach of, are we going to have, is it more of a top-down approach, or is it a mesh structure where you've got both the roles and also the multidisciplinary, cross-disciplined, multi-skilled people working as teams? Is that how we're going to achieve? Or is it going to be dependent on the departments, the teams, and things like that? So what kind of approach are we going to take? And then what is this as a limitation? What are the constraints? What are the infrastructure aspects that we need to look at for defining the solution? Are we limited by the technology? We've got, for example, we've been using a lot of Microsoft kind of based tools and techniques and applications. So should we just be limited to Microsoft solution even for the new proposed solution, or can we think open source solution? Similarly, if it's Oracle based, can we go for something else? Or is it more of, for example, if you've got all the on-premise solutions now where you need to have that servers and everything, and the solutions are deployed internally within our own servers to, for example, if you want to actually go cloud transformation, you want to go cloud, how can we actually, think differently? How can we move all of this from the on-premise situation to a cloud-based solution? So again, thinking in terms of those. So what are the limitations that we have now? So you can try and take decisions accordingly. And then once you have that, you need to understand how your solution would be performing. So what kind of metrics that you would have to understand, monitor, track, and assess whether you've got the right solution in place. How is it being performed? So after you deploy the solution, again, for example, if you have this mobile application or web application that you deploy, that you created, after deployment of that, you can see the engagement, what kind of views are being expected, how many customers, how many users are there now on the platform at the moment, what's the active users, what is the total user base, how many views are there for the content, what kind of likes, what comments, how is engagement happening, how much of, if it's a video, how much of footage of video has been viewed by the people. So all of these would be giving us indicators as to how good or how bad we designed and deployed and developed the solution. So we need to be aware of the engagement analytics and the insights once the product hits the market. So we need to be keeping track of how our solution is actually performing. So again, solution performance measures to be, in terms of where we want to be is the goal. Measure is what you want to measure so that we can achieve the goal. So these are two different things. So we need to be aware of these two things. So the goals should be definitely, so for example, if you want to launch something like an e-commerce website, you might want to say that it should be like Amazon, the top 3 marketplaces in the whole world where you would like to keep yourself as a market. That's your vision. But the goal should be something like, I want to have, let's say, 30% of the market share, with potentially coming in from Europe, Americas, and Asia. If you want to say that, you're defining some goals there, right? So you're specific. And then measure is how you would get there, how you would what kind of things are in place for you to get there. What's the current market share? What kind of user base you have got? How many users are active using it? What is the sales coming in from the website? How many channels are there now? Can I drive it through other alternative channels? So all of these would be your aspects that you need to consider. Stakeholder analysis results, very important. Again, you need to understand the outcomes coming in from different stakeholder analysis, the RACI matrix, and the stakeholder, the power interest grade that we talked about, and also the various engagement aspects of the STOP, the strategic, tactical, and operational measures that we have indicated, the techniques that we can deploy. What are the outcomes that we've got from the elicitation and the analysis? All of that need to be, again, considered for defining the current state and future ones. So in terms of the purpose of this current state, that it is actually helpful, as we discussed, that we need to generate the need for the organization to change. And that's important because we are all averse to change, including people, businesses, organizations in general. Everybody is averse to change, but we need to understand that we can't just stay put and do the same things again and again and again, for decades and centuries. We need to be nimble, we need to be agile, we need to grasp, we need to be able to embrace and adapt the change. And that's why it's really important that we define these in a way that our organization is able to take decisions quickly, be able to implement the solutions and move on, and continuously trying to be innovative and be able to stay on the top of the curve with respect to what we're trying to do. And if you want to do that, we need to really understand what's the impact. I mean, again, going back to the previous one, we need to do the impact analysis of the change, understand what is the potential impact of any change that is going to affect our organization, the processes, the products, the resources, whether it could be negative or positive, and how would that impact us in terms of the proposed solution that we are going to build. Very important. And in terms of the specifics, as we see, changes are triggered by problems or opportunities. Sometimes it's the opportunity as well. So you look at it, the different perspectives, right? So a change could be triggered, in terms of a negative aspect of it, that, oh no, I've got to do this because this is what the compliance says, this is what regulatory stuff says. Or you can view it as an opportunity that you're trying to do a different thing from the usual stuff. So you can actually look at as an opportunity as well, that it is opening the doors and windows to you. You're perhaps forced to do things differently. You're perhaps forced to consider different strategies, enter different markets. But actually, that is a good opportunity for you because you're now expanding your operations. You're reaching newer markets, newer geographies, newer countries and newer spaces and markets, which gives you a lot of exposure, and potentially you can try and explore those markets for better reach and better income streams as well. And for doing that, you need to really have a good understanding of the business needs. Again, we need to understand everything is driven by the business needs, the opportunities, the challenges, the constraints in terms of the business and the customers and the users. And that's the reason why we should have all of these in place. That understanding would actually help us to create a proper strategy, something that really works, that would help us to smoothly and seamlessly achieve where we want to go. In terms of the analyzing the current state or as-is state, it's really, really important. When we have all the resources, for example, we know pretty much everything about the existing state of affairs. We know all the information, we know the problems, we know the challenges, the constraints, the pain areas. We know how things can go wrong. We know what are the weaknesses that we have in our processes. We know the breakdown scenarios in the processes. We know which skills we are short of. We know which kind of resources we do not have at the moment, but we need potentially all those gaps, those missing things, those breakdown areas in the processes, the features that you do not have in your product, the kind of problems with how you deliver your user experience. All of these are important for us to be able to understand and define where we are now, the as-is situation. So it could be, for example, as we discussed at the time, customers being frustrated with our service. They actually give a feedback. If they're not happy with our product, you immediately get a feedback on, or the review, they'll write a review. If they're happy, most of the time it says that they keep saying that if you are happy with your product, whatever you buy, you don't really write any review or any feedback. You're happy to just use it, right? But the moment when you get really disappointed with it, and when you're frustrated using it, or when you're not happy receiving perhaps the wrong product or the wrong size or wrong requirements, that's when you start writing a review about the vendor, about who sold that particular product to you or who offered that service. That's when, so a negative publicity, a negative feedback is quick. People just catch up to that. But positive things, it's hard to say. So it's really important to understand those feelers in the market, in the customers, understand where they are not being served better, where there are problems, where there are gaps, try and address those first. Business users are confused regarding choosing the right process or appropriate steps to be taken. Very important, because they do not know about which ones to choose from. They're confused and they do not know how to go about doing that. For example, if you're talking about in the context of buying an industrial oil or industrial what we call as industrial glue, some people are clueless as to what is the best solution, what are the requirements, where to go to get that industrial, because it's not the traditional, the run-of-the-mill product. It's a very niche product, so they need that kind of guidance, that kind of market to go, and the support to help them compare and contrast different options and being able to select the one. And if they are not sure which one, they perhaps want to ask somebody or to read some literature, look at the reviews. So all of these are important because it's not something that is easily available. And then about the power of automation, very important. You need to really first look at the existing processes and try and improve the process before you start inducting a new technology, because it doesn't help solve the problem. Having a fantastic technology will not help solve the problems of existing processes. If there are any gaps, it won't fix it. That's why we say that if you have a process, set your house in order. Make sure you look at the process that is existing, identify any gaps, anything that is missing, anything that is burning out, anything that is breaking down, address that, fix those, re-engineer those processes, improve them, and then try and automate them later. Then try and bring in new technology. Then it would help solve, because the technology is not going to drive the whole business. It's only going to enable. Technology is a great enabler, but it's not going to fundamentally change the existing set of processes, I think, just because it is deployed. It needs to be thought through, right? So that's again